Well, hello, this is Michael Allen from Manpower of Richmond, and today's kind of a kickoff of an idea that had for a while to do a podcast, and we're calling it The Hub with Michael Allen. And so today with me for our first podcast is David Young, and David is with Christ Presbyterian Church and has a ministry called Clear Counseling. And David's been a longtime friend of mine, and I thought who better to kind of start us off as have a friend here with me this morning, and just to talk about him and his journey to Richmond. David, welcome to this podcast number one. It's great to have you.
Good to be here.
So, you were in Richmond before, and believe that was 1996.
1996,
Yeah,
that's right.
so-
Fresh out of seminary, and my wife and 3 kids came here, and it was probably it was our first church ministry experience as far as working in the church, coming here.
And but you weren't just in ministry. I mean, that wasn't your vocation initially. You were involved.
Not up until then. I grew up in a home where my dad was a hardworking individual, but he always had the American dream that there was a ship around the corner that was going to bring in extra funds. So he was always trying to tap that. And so all these different enterprises that he would have, I was always coming alongside him. So starting at age 13, we were always doing these odd jobs everywhere, and that sort of instilled just sort of a construction work ethic in us. And we stayed with that business after college at Auburn, and just a few outside employment opportunities, but ended up back where him and I had a company together called Masonry Specialty, and but under that heading, we just sort of did most everything, but we ended up for about 10 years doing kind of a commercial flat work application of concrete brick pavers, like revitalization projects like we had here in Richmond maybe 2 decades ago, I guess, where they paved the sidewalks and everything. That's the kind of work we used to do.
Mm-hmm.
So doing that, but when the ministry bug hit me, we knew it was kind of time to move on.
Mm-hmm. So how did you know that? I mean, the ministry bug hit you. I mean, what was that?
Well, as far as faith-wise, I grew up in a Christian home, but it's sort of like it was a faith of my father's, and I came alongside it, and it really did not register with my heart until later on. And then when you have your own wife, your own children, your own life, and just the pressures of life were coming upon me in such a way, and it was affecting me, affecting my marriage, and there's a lot of story in there. The reality of the presence of God hit me, and the reality that He would love me so much that He would send His Son, which I connected with for the first time, having my own son, that He would send His Son to come and die for me. And all of a sudden the story turned into reality, and it just went from head to heart to impacting me. And I was like, man, this is a message this world needs to hear. And it kind of came upon me that way, but also it healed my marriage. It healed, my wife and I were like a step away from divorce. I mean, it was not good. And then for me, when I discovered the grace of the Lord and its impact on me, it changed me as a person and as a husband and as a father. And really our marriage began to thrive after that. And in the course of that, I'm still just deacon in the church, just one of the rest of the people, and other families, other friends of mine were just going, hey, can you talk to me? Because we're having trouble in our marriage. We've seen the change in you. And I started interacting with husbands and couples, and I guess after a bit, I was like, I kind of like this Christian counseling thing. you know. And I was like, but I have no experience in ministry, and so I started saying, what's the next step? And some guy was like, well, you need to go to seminary, you need to get an MDiv, and so I go to seminary to get my MDiv, and then in the MDiv program, they're like, well, we're not going to just teach you counseling, but we want to teach you preaching. That's part of the MDiv. You're going to study the original languages. You're going to study God's word, and in that, I fell in love with preaching, and so it was like I kind of stopped the counseling aspect of it and just went more to preaching, teaching, and so when I graduated from seminary, came to here in Richmond, working under Mark Dalby, great guy, good senior pastor to work for, and cut my teeth in ministry, and just learned the ropes of what it's to be a pastor. And then when we moved on to South Dakota, was there for 10 years as the senior pastor there, preaching, teaching, doing a lot of that. But there was a lot of counseling as well, spiritual guidance type counseling. But then when we started planting churches in Northwest Florida particularly, when we planted that church, there was not just ministry opportunities, but we weren't just preaching and teaching, but I came alongside a sort of a military community. And in that, these guys were struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They were struggling with coming out of a high-stress environment into a civilian environment and really struggling with that transition. We had guys that were coming back alive but had friends that had died in the field, so they were struggling with, I survived. They did not. Now they have survivor's guilt. We had guys that just, when they came back, they left one type of person, they come back to their wives or to their families, and they're like, I'm a different person. I'm an animal. And so suicide, the rate of suicide for these people, this group, was so high, and I was interacting with them. And so the counseling that was doing it was kind of beyond spiritual. And I was like, God, these guys, they need something that I can't offer them. I had really no depth of skill or knowledge to help them through this process. I could just sort of tell them about Jesus and pray, and it just, I just felt so, I don't know what's the word, just inadequate to come around them. But my heart was breaking for them. And so that was my first taste of, I really need more depth of knowledge. Then we went to Texas and planted that church there. The counseling aspect, still preaching, teaching, but the counseling aspect there was with families, with marriages. And there was this one marriage in particular that got a call from the husband. He says, my wife just kicked me out. I'm in a hotel room tonight. And so it just, for 3 weeks, I'm interacting with him. And then he's like, what's the next steps? And I was like, well, we got to interact together. And then for 2 weeks, I was meeting with them for like 5 hours a day, just coming in saying, what is going on?
It's a lot of time.
It was a lot of time. It was a full court press because their marriage, they were talking divorce. And so it was just like, no, we're going to work through this. You guys are good people. And I know you love each other, but it was just so much history and so much, just unresolved issues, that, we just had to get it out. It's just, I know it was, I don't know, it was painful, but at the same time, I went home and I told my wife, I was going, man, I don't know what this says about me, but I love this. And so we were, this was right before the pandemic. And it was like, I really feel a transition from ministry of being preaching and teaching to being more one-on-one, interacting with people just face-to-face and counseling. And I wanted, I guess initially what I was hoping to do was to not go into the world as a Christian counselor, but to go into the world as a counselor who is a Christian. Okay. To kind of come in and be able to come alongside anyone. They didn't have to be of faith, that I could come alongside them and help them in whatever trauma or issue or situation that they were in, and not feel that, they're going to feel the guilt of faith or lack of faith, sort of being the edge of the conversation. And so decided to go and ended up at Colorado Christian University to get a master's in mental clinical health counseling. And so that took about 3 years. So I was planting a church and that, but by the grace of God, the Lord hit a pandemic upon the world, which made our church work stop.
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything. And but online class with the university, it was just like we didn't miss a beat. And so in that time, I was getting my degree, and so got my degree. Just ended up here in Richmond, and just through just a lot of different doors that opened wide, and connected up with Christ Presbyterian Church. And what I love about that connection is I serve as an assistant pastor within the church, but have another connection to be able to offer myself into the community. And that aspect is called Clear Counseling. And so it's an outreach of Christ Presbyterian Church, that we can come alongside people, come alongside organizations, like with Manpower, Golden Engineering, Bible Study Fellowship. Just whoever would like to come, that's who I'm coming around. So it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I know I've asked you to come to our office and just give, just talks every, 8 to 12 weeks or so. And I know our staff has enjoyed having you come and do those. As far as, how's your schedule going now that you've been here in town? And I mean, are you kind of booked? I mean, how's that going?
It's filling up. There's days that I may not have anything, but those days are filled by what I do with the church. And so it's I don't know. I'm very busy, and so that's kind of been fun to just kind of I don't know where I'm going to be sometimes, because right now I don't have an office. And so I'm meeting with people at Roscoe's or at Fifth Street Bakery or at Starbucks or there at the church if they feel comfortable. I just want people to feel, one, if I'm interacting with female, I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel that they can express themselves in a situation, that they can cry, and not feel like all eyes are upon them. So I just want them to be in their best place.
Right.
What will work well for you, and so that's gone really well. And the folks at Fifth Street, they were like, we should rent you an office.
Yeah.
And because I see them quite a bit.
Ultimately, though, I mean, what some of the long range goals are to have your own office,
Yeah.
and maybe even have someone else doing counseling as well. Isn't that true?
I mean, if things went according to my dreams and aspirations, I would love just a place downtown, open. I love this building here with all the windows and natural light that comes in, but to be able to be a place where people can come, but it's eventually I would like to add on a female counselor, licensed mental health counselor themselves, and that we can kind of reach maybe a group that I won't be able to reach very well when you get into abuse situations or that type of counseling where they would feel more comfortable talking to a female. But I would like to branch out into addiction. There's a huge need in this area, not just in Richmond, but in this, where communities are agricultural, moving, they're being depopulated, they're moving out of the agricultural business, and so a lot of that population they're just attracted to drugs, and so they're getting hooked on meth, and I saw a report probably about 5 years ago where just outside of Muncie is the meth capital of the world. And it's just right here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's unbelievable. So then you got Interstate 70 that's just a traffic of drugs. And so it's just this population is trying to get out. How do we get out of that? And so I would like to just have a strong addiction aspect to what we do. And,
A lot of, it seems like a lot of people say they, or might say they've got issues or whatever. And I mean, and how do you, it seems like almost anyone could spend time with a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, how does someone decide for, hey, I think I probably need to reach out to somebody? I mean, is there some epiphany or something that happens that you should know that it's time to do that? Or,
Right.
I mean, some people just, they muddle through, they do okay, but
Right,
I don't
right.
know if they're really doing okay or not. But
Right.
I don't know if you know where I'm leading with this
Sure.
question, but
I mean, it's you ever felt bad and you're going, should I go to a doctor or not? You know, and you deliberate because you're sitting there going, that's a lot of effort. I got to pay money, and we end up don't. You know, we're sitting there going, I'll take care of myself. So mental health issues is the same thing. You know, just sitting there going, man, I feel down right now. And so the first thought is not, I need to talk to somebody. And usually what happens is someone will struggle with either depression or anxiety, and they'll struggle with it for months and months and months and months, even years. And then all of a sudden they have friends that are like, dude, you probably should see somebody. You know, so when they get to me, they're so far down the road that we have to kind of figure out how to put the brakes on. How do we come alongside them where they are? And then slowly work their way back into, you know, how do we normalize ourselves? How do we start thinking the way we should think? And that's a progress. That's a journey. Now, I would rather meet people, you know, instead of at the Valley, you know, maybe when they tip and they say, man, I'm kind of, I would love to talk with someone. That's when I would love to see people, you know, before they get too deep. And right now, counseling still has a stigma. You know, it's just, and I walked into your office, and someone they recognized me. They're going, "Who are you here to see?"
yeah.
You know, and it was just like, I was like, yeah, I'm here to see Michael, but we're going to do a podcast, you know, and it just, I felt like I had to, you know, relieve everybody that I'm not targeting anybody in particular. And
They didn't say, "Oh, we're glad you're finally talking."
That's
to
right,
Michael.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, someone did say he needs a lot of work, but to see a counselor still carries the stigma that something's wrong with you, and I don't know why it does, but everybody needs to talk to someone. Right. We're community people. And so you have maybe 40% of the population that has support. They have a good support. And so when they have issues, they have people they can talk to. And so do they need counselors? Well, they may eventually, maybe, you know, there may be something, a high tide, a season that they could. But if you have such good support, then you don't. You know, the therapy that you get with friends and church and groups and community is very helpful. But then you got 60% that don't. And so they're the ones that are sitting there going, well, when you don't have that, then come and see a counselor, reach out. And that's where, you know, I kind of come in. And because when you got the 60%, let's go to that category there. So if someone is needing a counselor and you look at what kind of help is going to help them, you know, almost half the time, just talking to someone is going to help them. Just talking. And so we're not talking about mental health issues. We're not talking about, you know, depression, anxiety, bipolar, or anything like that. We're just talking the relief of stress of just talking to someone. And so then the rest of it, say, okay, what's the other 50%? Are they diagnosable? Well, 25% of them are not. 25% of them are, they just need to have someone come around them, help them think through a problem. What are some steps that we can try to get out of this? And so that's, you know, I can work with that. Then you got the last 25, maybe to 15% that have true mental health issues. And that's where I can be of help, but there's probably others that are more qualified to help. You know, your psychiatrists, those that can prescribe medication to help them, you know, think through and that type of thing. So anyway, so the service that I'm able to provide is you know, helps basically, you know, I don't even know the percentages right now, but most of the time, just interacting with a counselor helps.
You made me, it said like, you made a comment about people just need someone to talk to. But one thing that that I made a note about. It's like, it seems like sometimes there's always that person in the office who has self-designated them as the office counselor, and there's somebody in there. There can be people like that. I mean,
Right.
it seems like to me that maybe that's not always the most healthiest scenario, or is that okay? I mean,
a lot of times you do have someone that has a persona about themselves that is a good listener. And so if someone comes in and says how you're doing, and they will listen to you tell their story, that is a rare thing, because you just don't find many of them. And they may consider themselves, they're saying, well, I just have a natural empathy for people, and I just want to come alongside them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, if they're just listening and helping that way. But then you have some that are, they like to control people. Oh, well, this is your problem, and you should be doing this. And so if you have anybody that comes in and tells you you should be doing this, you should run. Because even when people interact with me and they're sitting there going, well, what would you tell me to do? I would pull it back onto them and say, what do you think you should do? It's for someone to discover their own route and be empowered in their own route is going to be the most healthiest route.
Yeah.
And
some people just want to just tell me what to do.
Exactly.
It's like you're having like a conflict with your spouse or something. Just
Right.
tell me what you want me to do,
Right.
and then we can just move on.
Right. And yeah, that never works, does it?
What do you feel like is I mean, is there kind of a common thing that people need? I mean, everyone's individual, right? But is it just a need to be heard? I mean, sometimes is that the big thing, or
I've been surprised that the biggest thing is the need to be heard. It's you got a husband who has a wife that just talks at him, and he doesn't know how to respond. That a case in point would, and I probably fall in this category. It's if my wife she's saying something, I feel the edge of what she's saying. Now I'm processing what's the edge, and as she talks, I'm trying to figure out how to reply. And then my brain is sitting there going, if I say this, then she's going to reply this. And all of a sudden, I'm having an argument with my wife in my head as she continues to talk. So now I've lost all the conversation that she's trying to tell me. I'm not listening to her. And so as husbands listening to their wife, sometimes there's, come alongside and say, do you do this? And they're like, oh, I do that. Well, okay, how can we do that better? Now we're dialoguing of how we can maybe interact better. How can we listen better? Instead of listening to respond, how can we listen to hear and to understand and come alongside?
We talked about this when you came in to my office recently, and a lot of times you greet people, and it happens all the time. Hey, how are you? And I'm great, or okay, or I'm fine, or sometimes I'm not doing very good.
Right.
I mean, it's like a courtesy to say how you're doing, but then the response sometimes is a tell that there's something going on. Even you mentioned when someone says fine, I think you used a term for that. What was that?
Well, FINE stands for feelings inside not expressed.
Right.
And so it kind of wraps up most everybody in the typical one-on-one.
Yeah. I mean, so how do you deal with that? I mean, what is there? I mean, I'm just a little bit of a loss, because sometimes you have that greeting, and then you get multiple things, and then it's like you kind of like, I'm not sure how to react to that.
Right.
Oh, okay. Move on.
Sure.
Or you want to be. I mean, most of us want to be kind, caring people.
Right.
But we're busy. We've got stuff going on, and it's like, oh boy, if I get in this conversation, it could be hours.
Right.
I don't. I don't know. I mean,
if that's your first thought, you should not be a counselor.
Right. No.
But when you come alongside someone and you have enough relationship that you know them, and they come in and say, "Hey, Michael, how are you doing?" You go, "I'm fine." And then I'm sitting there going, yeah, dude, I know you better than that, you know. And so you say you're fine, but I can tell you're not fine. What's going on? And so then you give the opportunity for them to share. And my encouragement would be, if you're at that spot, then relocate. Let's go have coffee. Let's go to some place where we're not in the office, or where can we be alone, where we can. I've interacted with people that they just needed to yell, and if they laced it with provocative words, then they have the freedom to do that, and to get into a point where they can just let it explode is so therapeutically wonderful to get it out, and you're the person that they're able to interact with and do that. And so you want to give them that freedom, that place. And, but to come in and just know someone and know they're not fine, because if you press them a little bit further, and they're like, I really don't want to talk about it. And then you have to let them go. You're sitting there going, okay, hey, look, I'm here for you. If ever, just give me a call.
Yeah, I think I've probably received multiple levels of grades in that department. Sometimes done a good job, others not. But I guess unknowingly, there has been a few occasions where I've worked with somebody and I knew there was something going on, or something at work just wasn't missed, and I've invited them to say, "Hey, let's go get coffee," and because I just feel like your conversation can be so much better outside of the work environment, because you still could have interruptions or whatever, and so you have to be careful in which environment that you meet with somebody, obviously, but
Right.
But I would have to say that the times that I've done that, they've always been pretty productive meetings with people.
Right. And that's the heart of a counselor.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of what I do.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing, your thoughts about this today. I did a couple of things I want to ask you about is that, in Indiana, there's this rivalry between Indiana and Purdue, and, you went to Auburn, and it seems like there's this big rivalry between Auburn and Alabama. Is that the big rivalry? I mean, do they tell me a little bit? Because I'm not from the South, and you hear about Alabama, and then but you're a big Auburn person. I mean, what's that like? Because I know you're a big Auburn fan.
Yeah, Auburn, Alabama is like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. There isn't much gray area. You're either on one side or you're on the other. The joke is, when you're born in Alabama, they put an armband on you of who you're rooting for, and it's just, and from birth you're one or the other, and it's just it's not friendly. That rivalry in football, when they were playing, it got so fierce they had to stop it because they were fighting, and so for 20, 30 years they would not play each other, and it took an act of state Congress to bring them back together. And so then they started playing each other again, and it's still a very fierce rivalry, more so for the fans than the players themselves. But
yeah. I just thought I'd ask you about that. And there's one other thing I want to ask you on a personal note. I forget where I saw it. I saw a clip of you playing baseball, or is that true?
Well, I did play baseball.
Yeah, wasn't there? I thought I saw a picture of you playing ball or something. I mean, was that something that growing up was a big part of your life?
Oh, big time. Baseball was my thing. I loved football, but I was so small I just broke every time I got hit. And but baseball, I was able to throw. I was a pitcher, and I could do all sorts of stuff with the ball, and so I had hopes of playing in the major leagues. And my senior year, I threw my shoulder out, and so it wasn't like my hopes got dashed entirely, but I had to just play around it. And in fact, I didn't correct my shoulder issues until 2018, some 35 years later.
Wow.
But baseball was my thing.
Yeah. I mean, baseball is it's kind of interesting. I mean, this area has been kind of a big Reds area, and now finally, at least for now, the Reds have a decent team, and they're very, very, I guess, entertaining to watch.
Being a Alabama boy, it would be surprising, but Cincinnati Reds was my team.
Really?
I loved the Reds, and Johnny Bench, he was just one of my heroes, and and that shortstop, boy, I can't.
Dave Concepcion.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, that guy was amazing, and Sparky Anderson, and before he went to Detroit. I mean, it just the whole crew. I just loved the persona of the Reds.
Yeah. We're really showing our age here because no one's going to know.
Nobody's
these
gonna know
names.
those names. It's just like who, but no, that was my team.
Great. Well, I think there's probably a million things I've forgotten I wanted to ask you or we can
Yep.
still talk about, but
Sure.
really appreciate the conversation today, and maybe we can do this again some other time.
I would love that.
All right. Thanks a lot, David. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Michael. Sure thing.